now we should
Hello everyone, welcome to our monthly review of what's going on in the short-term rental industry. I will let people come in, and again welcome everybody. So we should get started like in 2 minutes. I just again want to make sure people can get in, but already thank you so much for showing up. What am I thanking people? Also would like to thank Vacasa. As you know, Vacasa works at Rental Scale Up and Price Labs now as well, and she's the one who's put together this conference, the emails you're getting, everything, all the communications. So I would like to make sure I can thank her. To make sure we start on time, I will actually start already. Few slides. I promised it's like 4 or 5 slides. I think that's it. But I'd just like to give you the agenda and introduce Francois from Enzo Connect, who's a speaker today, also a sponsor. Thanks for that. And also, as you know, you get a demo from brand new product from Nathan, who will show us something new. So let me just get you immediately through the slides and to give you some context of what we shall be discussing today. And as usual, if you know me, I'm always a bit struggling with my tabs. Codes. This one is called I'm writing good content right now. Let's see, that's the one. All right. Now people are coming in. Well, welcome. Thanks for joining. We're starting right now the short-term rentals news overview of the month. All right, and let's get started here. Let me go back to the very first slide. It's never the first slide. I don't know if it's like for you with you guys when you use Canva, but I was like, I wish it was a bit easier. But let's see. So I'm guessing to present. Oh, that's not my presentation, so I'm guessing I got the right present like this. All right, so let's start this animations. I said thanks so much for to Enzo Connect for being our sponsor today. We shall talk with Francois about what Enzo Connect does. Obviously, I'm Thibault. I'm the that's very fast. These slides were way too fast.
I think it's 35 seconds to present.
All right, look at that. I know I don't like slides either, but that's a lot. Let me just make it easier. It's just all right, let's do it this way. All right. Sometimes things are a bit chaotic at the beginning, but it's always for a good cause. All right. All right, let's do it this way, you know what. All right, so as you know, I'm Thibault, I'm the founder of Rental Scale Up. So we are live today. We obviously also recording this. So the 5,000 people who are in our list will get the recording tomorrow. But if you're live today, you get to ask us questions because obviously we have a Q&A, and you can ask questions anytime during the in the chat during the show today, as well as the end live with us. So Rental Scale Up, we do 2 things. We talk about the short-term rental industry, and also we are now part of Price Labs, which is a dynamic pricing company. That's what we do. So today so as I said, it's a new format for us, a short-term rental news roundup. Okay, in the agenda today, basically, we're going to introduce ourselves. And as I said, we'll have a quick demo from a brand new solution. Nathan will show us something brand new. I'm very excited. I really liked it because usually, actually, I get a preview of the demos. I'm like, yeah, I like it. I want people to share that. Again, either if you see this tomorrow with 5,000 other people in the list, you also going to like it, I'm sure. And actually, then with Francois, we'll go through the data. So topics today will be covering Francois again to give you an idea. Airbnb had this 2022 winter release. We'll be talking about what Francois I think are the biggest news really here. and what really think what's behind Brian Chesky's mind. We'll also be talking about their new display, where they display the whole prices with all fees included, and how it's not so new actually if you're not in the US, if you're in Europe, for example. We'll talk about also some difficult topics. For example, there's been a lot of companies like Vacasa, for example, AvantStay announcing layoffs. So we'll be talking about this, what it may mean for us, if you're a property manager, for example. Last thing, we talk about sustainability. Funny enough, I think people are finally taking this seriously, just because sometimes it helps you save money. All right, that was the introduction. So today we'll have Francois from Enzo Connect. Francois is a co-founder, CEO of Enzo Connect, and Nathan Hertz from Paraspot. What I would love to do is for maybe Francois to introduce yourself and explain to us, who you are, what you do, and tell us more about Enzo Connect, please.
100%. So, yep, my name is Francois, and you pronounced it so perfectly, Thibaut. And we're basically a guest experience platform that two-way synchronizes with your property management system. And our approach is not rip and replace all the technology that you're using, but rather connect it, monetize and digitize your guest experience. So upsells, guidebooks, smart locks, check-in steps, verification, you name it, we most likely connect with the platforms you use, and we help you make more money per guest with different approaches, upsells like early check-in, a streamlined check-in experience, and so on. We work with about 20,000 properties now in 50 plus countries, and excited to be on this panel to talk about these different topics, because I think there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, and thank you, Francois, because I'm excited to have you here, because we'll be talking about, for example, the financial aspect of some companies are downsizing, and actually we'll talk about companies in our industry picturing themselves as tech companies, where actually they are really about short-term rentals, and you built a tech company. That's why I'm very excited to have your viewpoint here, for example. But before we start covering the news together, we also have Nathan from Paraspot. Nathan, do you want to please maybe get started again? Introduce yourself, introduce the company, and take us maybe through a demo of the product.
Cool. Yeah, so really excited being here. Nice to meet you all in the crowd also. So as Thibaut mentioned, my name is Nathan. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Paraspot. And Paraspot enables property managers and hosts to manage guest checkouts, maintenance work, and cleaning from the comfort of their office. I will share my screen with you guys now. Let me see. Just let me know if you can see it. I will put in presenting mode also. Sorry, I'm seeing it's loading. Here we go. Great. So, as I mentioned, Paraspot enables property managers and hosts to manage the guest checkouts from the comfort of their office. We do this with our AI-powered virtual inspections. These inspections can detect missing and stolen inventory, damages to the property that occurred during a stay. And we basically cut down the 20-minute inspection that is done by inspectors of hosts or of property management companies from 20 minutes to 90 seconds. And the nice side effect of it is as well that we have a 99% accuracy, meaning that no more mistakes by human that don't see issues in the apartment. You're probably wondering yourself how we do this. The first step is that the host takes a video of the whole property from their mobile phone and upload it onto our platform. We call this the baseline video. This baseline video is basically here for our AI to understand the organization of the whole apartment. We create a complete inventory list, including paintings, art pieces, furniture, etc. And we also take the information about the state of the apartment. On the checkout date, we send a link to the checkout scan to the guest or the cleaning lady. I'm happy to elaborate on this. Our clients are actually split more or less as 50-50. Some like the guests to do it, some like the cleaning staff to do it. But let me show you how this scan works. What basically happens is this is the link that the person sees. He opens it through the mobile phone and allows access to the camera. What happens next is that we start a live stream. What you can see here in the top right corner is a frame that we took from the baseline video. And the person basically has to find that picture. Once he reaches 100% match, it moves on to the next picture. This is how we can control that he covers the whole apartment, and we get a synchronized way for each video after each stay. I will just run you through this quickly. It's running super smoothly. This is a studio of one of our clients, and it literally it's around 40 square meters, and it takes the person 25 seconds to run through the whole property. Once it's finished, it stops automatically, and the person is released from the scan. What we do next is called our report. For each checkout, we create a complete report which the property manager or the host can see. They can see the video that the person recorded. They can see an overview of the issues in the apartment. So here in this example, there were 2 inventory-related issues, meaning 2 things were missing, and 4 organization-related issues, meaning 4 items were misplaced. And here in this example, there was a missing painting and a missing chair. All that you can see is created completely automated. We also detect damages. It's super important, right? Because we have the baseline and we have the checkout scan. We know exactly what happens during a stay. No more problems with security deposits. No more finger pointing of who did it. It wasn't here before or it was here before. The results are the following. We continuously document the state of each apartment after every stay. Our clients spend 1/5 of the time on each inspection, on top of eliminating human error. We record an inventory of each apartment. We understand the quality of work being done between each tenant, cleanliness, repairs, and restocking, and no more security deposit disputes. Well, the slides are stuck for some reason, but yeah, please, if you have questions, get in touch with me. Similar to what Francois also does, we integrate with certain real estate PMSs. So yeah, happy if you guys want to be in touch and learn more about it.
Thank you so much, Nathan. That was, right in the time we gave you, fantastic. And it's thanks for volunteering and presenting this. I'm personally very excited. I really like your demo, and that's great. So please stay with us. And again, Nathan, maybe you also have views on what we're going to be talking about. So feel free to comment in the chat or to coming in the end. I'll be very happy to also have your views on that. Thanks, Nathan. All right, Francois, let's get started. So the first topic I wanted to cover for us with you was the Airbnb 2022 winter release. So last week, Brian Chesky from Airbnb unveiled their, let's say, new series of features and programs. What I mean by programs is not just like features, but as well like services or ways for Airbnb to actually leverage their host community. So to me, there was 3 big things here. The new big thing was one, Airbnb setup. So Airbnb setup is basically a way for Airbnb to attract millions of new hosts. Yes, if you're a host right now on Airbnb, yes, you will be competing with way more hosts in next months and years. That's what Airbnb wants. It's good for Airbnb because they want more supply everywhere. Also, in these times of recession, it's also good for Airbnb because more competition probably means average prices, average daily rates going down on the platform overall, right? So that could be a reason why they're doing this. So Airbnb setup to me is also very interesting in the sense that it helps basically people who are afraid of getting started. It helps them get started with a lot of reassurance. First, if they want to, they can get matched with the superhost. That's not brand new. We had this last year with the Ask a Superhost. But what is new, they go further in the sense that not only are you matched with the superhost who can get you create your listing, but you can even go like on Zoom-like function and share your screen with the superhost, and they can help you rearrange your photos, set up your pricing. So it's very, very powerful. Second thing they do, they also allow you, if you want, as a new host, to only welcome experienced guests. And that's an issue because we've seen, Airbnb is very powerful, right? Airbnb is able to attract a lot of new people to the platform. And over the last 2 years of pandemic, a lot of hosts have complained that there's a lot of new people on the platform, new guests who have no clue about what a short-term rental is. They don't know that there's not going to be a front desk. They don't know that, yes, there is a cleaning fee. We heard that loud and clear, but these people don't have the right expectations. So the idea for Airbnb is to protect new hosts by allowing them to say, I only want at first to welcome experienced guests, people who basically have had probably a few stays under their belt and probably good reviews, because there's this two-way review system on Airbnb. The third thing Airbnb is doing for new hosts is give them a dedicated support line. So probably not as fast as the ones we have as super hosts, but it's the idea of putting more human touch into a great and fast onboarding system. So if you're into tech, it's very, very interesting again, right? You always want to improve your onboarding system, but still they recognize that, yes, when people don't do the tasks, you don't create a listing every day, and you're going to create maybe one listing, and you're not going to create one again before a long time if you're just a small host, right? So they do recognize that having maybe some humans to help you on board, it's exciting. That's how you Airbnb setup, this best first thing. What's your take on the Airbnb setup, Francois, for example?
Oh, I think it's what made Airbnb so successful. I mean, when I speak to my friends, for example, and I tell them I'm in the hospitality space or specifically vacation rentals, they get a bit confused. And then I just say Airbnb, and they go, oh yeah, Airbnb, I know. And we tend to forget that Airbnb wasn't the first on the market. In 1992, I think it was Verbo that came out. But the reason Airbnb became such a coined name was because of how easy they made it to onboard, to have host payouts, to make money effectively on their platform. And I think the updates that were reflected in the winter release further instate those values of making it easy to make money on Airbnb. But I'd be interested to sort of categorize as well some of these updates based on what is the business model of Airbnb and what do they cater to? They cater to both guests and property managers and hosts. And I think the updates that they've released kind of cover both, especially when we start looking at, the pricing, including all fees and so on. But we can discuss that a bit more in depth in a second. What about yourself, Thibault? Where do you see the current host-focused updates with regards to, I guess, Airbnb's mantra of making it so easy for hosts to get online?
I like what you said. In a way, with Airbnb, we clearly see that 2023 is the new 2008, right? It's strange, but it's clear what Brian Chesky said. He said, we started out during the Great Recession, 2008, and we were hosting people in a spare bedroom in our apartment, right? And you saw him earlier this week, basically, or a few days ago. He's listing his own apartment, and you can book a room into his place. And what they say really that they think that during the recession, people changed their behaviors, and people who never had done this before say, you know what, I may try this Airbnb thing because I need to make ends meet, or we want to keep the second home we have, and we may want to put it out on the market. So to me, it's very, very interesting how Airbnb is always very smart at looking at trends and say, you know what, recessions, people want to make ends meet. We need to make it faster and easier for people who are afraid to start listing. That's the one thing I hear. And so second thing I would say here is that what's also very interesting to me is the renewed emphasis on private rooms, right? I mean, if you look at the Airbnb's interface, you could only find entire homes. They started out with private rooms, as you explained, right? But then they realized that entire homes, like what we call vacation rentals, short-term rentals, are of course very interesting. You make way more money. The booking value is way higher. So if you're going to spend marketing to attract traffic, let's say for people who want to book a night, or a few days in Austin, Texas, you probably want to attract people who are going to stay in an expensive place, not in one cheap bedroom, right?
Yeah.
And yet, so and even on a guest side, it was completely buried. It was very hard to find. It's just like, you know, something disappeared on Airbnb, right? If you try to find Airbnb experiences on their homepage or Airbnb online experiences, they're gone. It's not a priority for the moment. And yet last week, they started surfacing again as a category, private rooms.
Yeah.
It is a category by itself. So it's a good sign. But a question for you, Francois, though, another thing they're doing, I think they are reinforcing all the protections that hosts can get. Because again, when I work at booking.com, we talked a lot with potential new hosts, right? On why they didn't want to host or get started. And the first thing people have in mind is damage, fear. Yeah. What's going to happen to my place? And what if somebody, you know, breaks a leg? I'm going to get in the US, I'm going to get sued. In Europe, I'm going to get damaged. It's a bit different, but in the end, it's like fear. And Airbnb has announced they were improving that cover, right? And I think you have. Can you share a few things they've been doing, and so your view here as well?
100%. I mean, if you look at verification, right? So they've increased air cover both on the scope of different countries that it covers, but also the actual amount. But then they've actually reinstated or reiterated on some of the verification tools that they have, which also coincides if you think about choosing between experienced guests and new guests. So the idea of also choosing not just experienced guests based on the reviews they have, but also based on the fact that they've been verified and so on. And if I'm not mistaken, it's one of the very few channels that actually goes through that KYC process, know your customer, for guests. And it's reinstating, I would say, the second step of the buyer decision process. See, as a host, one of the first things is that leap of faith you need to make when you want to join the OTA and host your property, whether it's one room, whether it's the whole room, the whole house, etc. And I think if you look at how they've made it easy for you to get set up, so for you to understand what it's like to put your place on Airbnb, but then also to remove all of that concern and fear you might have about damage or fraudulent guests or whatever it might be, is effectively just making it easier for anyone to be an Airbnb host. And it follows with what you said, Thibaut, about private rooms. See, I think Brian Chesky's bet is with the recession, you know, whether we are in a recession currently or whether it's going to boom even further in the next couple of months or year, he's laying down the groundwork for anyone to make money off their current assets, their current property, their real estate, if you will. And adding on to that verification process is just to make it easier. So if you have one property, you have a room that you're thinking of putting on Airbnb, it's advantageous for Airbnb to have you on as a host. It's increased inventory. A lot of the updates that they've been making over the past year, 2 years, even categories or split stays, things like that, is to optimize the onboarding process, to optimize the number of properties on their platform. So I think we're seeing more of a recession-tide update, if you will, on Airbnb, which should signal increased competition, as you mentioned earlier, for all hosts, not just in this webinar.
And last thing, also on the same topic to close on that cover, what's also interesting, I agree with everything you're saying, and I would add, again, what I've learned from working at booking.com is that, for example, Airbnb had been offering like $1 million damage guarantee, right? Which is not insurance, it's a guarantee, which is basically, it's like, it's not primary insurance, it's not insurance, not even secondary insurance. It's like, I mean, I'm not sure anybody ever got the $1 million, right?
Yeah.
Now you're right, they upped the ante. It's like $3 million. Why did they have to increase that? Because nowadays, Vrbo has $1 million free liability insurance for hosts. So does booking.com. And so, okay, let's just say $3 million, which is basically, doesn't make sense because nobody's ever going to get 1 million, 3 million, but it has more. And so as you said as well, they do this guest screening, or they do this, they do the guest screening, but also they also screen bookings as well. If you're in the US or in main markets in Europe, this has been live for almost 1 to 2 years. So it's not new, it's just expanding globally.
Correct.
So it is interesting, right? It's like, so what we learned also by the way, that it's live in 35, like the booking screening is live in, so basically, as you know, when Airbnb had a lot of issues with the Airbnb house parties, they basically started making impossible for young people to book one stay night in the same city where they live. That's basically a lot of what they did. So that's expanding around the world, but it's not so new if you've been in the US. But again, it's what we've learned is that now it's live for the moment in 35 countries, as you said. But what we learned that it's 90% of Airbnb's bookings. So I'm like, okay, that's a good piece of information. 90% of Airbnb bookings come from 35 countries, which makes sense. But like we know that number one is US, number two is France in terms of destination as a market. But also number of hosts, actually, France is number two. So it is very, very interesting as well for market. So so you talk about the fears where like, maybe some hosts may think there's going to be more people, and we've heard about the Airbnb bust, right? It's been really, really live and several videos. So in a few words, the Airbnb bust is people posting videos on TikTok or message on Twitter that since the summer, especially in the US, people have seen a decrease in number of bookings they're getting from Airbnb. And that's a contrast with what Airbnb is saying that they just had in Q3. They're in the summer, basically their best quarter ever. But it means basically in terms of if a macro view of this, it means basically that Airbnb is doing well. They're driving a lot of demand, but they have so much more supply. But they have 15% more hosts than last year, for example, and they want to get more. It means probably there's like fewer reservations per listing. Another thing could mean, by the way, is that demand is borders have reopened. People go to cities again, for example. So maybe vacation rental markets like seaside, mountain, and rural maybe also are a bit maybe a bit less in demand, which is hard to say because they also had fabulous summers. So I'm not quite sure what to think. Any views you have on Airbnb bust and also on the power of social media of Airbnb?
Yeah, I think also the parallel with professionally managed inventory versus individual Airbnb hosts. I'd be interested to see what that information, that data looks like, the distribution of bookings across those two types of categories. Because if you look at Airbnb's update, I think this was on the last update back in the summer release, they also changed how they displayed names of properties where there was a higher emphasis on the location, which meant a higher emphasis on the thumbnail, which, let's be real, property managers with resources that can take perfect pictures of their properties, whether it's drone images, things like that, will have increased visibility on their properties and so on. I think the overall, Airbnb bust, as you call it, or social media, the increased inventory is absolutely reducing average price on a short-term rental, but also complaints from guests. Why am I going to pay? The whole business model of Airbnb was it was a cheaper alternative to traditional accommodations. And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I remember booking Airbnbs over the past 2 years, and it was pretty much the same price, if not more expensive than the hotel. So being able to bring back, instill those values, 2008, as you mentioned, and now 2022, is, I think, a key focus, key message of Airbnb today, but then also increased competition from alternate OTAs. Vrbo, nobody knew about Vrbo before the pandemic. And then YouTube, all I could see on YouTube were ads of Vrbo, and friends, family, people started realizing that there are other channels out there. So I think, diversifying people's channels has become a big trend. It's become easier with technology. Property management systems, channel managers, and so on have made it so easy for you to be on not just 2 OTAs, but 50 different OTAs if you wanted to increase visibility, which I think plays a role as well on that.
I feel so bad for Vrbo. Come on, they've been around for 20 years.
I know.
But what is true, though, in the US, especially, the brand HomeAway was so strong and they killed it, right? They had to pick between Vrbo and HomeAway. And also what's really funny that Airbnb is a global player, right? They are in every country in the world. So is Booking.com. But Vrbo is really only in 22 countries in the world. Not many people know that, but they're not everywhere. And in big countries, or countries that are big for them, like Australia, for example, or France, they're not even called Vrbo, right? In Australia, they're called stays, and they're Abritel in France. So it is, the Vrbo. But again, I agree with you. They've done an amazing job, Vrbo, being there, having the right messaging, and they're really good because also the whole last 2 years was all about people booking an entire home, not a private room, which is exactly and probably a larger place, which is what Vrbo is about. Vrbo is really about welcoming at least five. What Vrbo wants is different from Airbnb, right? What Vrbo wants is people booking a big place, at least 2 bedrooms. 70% of the supply of Vrbo has at least 2 bedrooms, and they want to have large families, like multi-generational families, like 5 or 6 guests. That's what they're aiming for, which is different from Airbnb, right? I mean, before the pandemic, the use case for Airbnb was like one couple booking a place in a city for a weekend, right?
Yeah.
Has changed during the pandemic, right? More people book, long stays, and people also book vacation rentals. But it's still going to be a core use case for Airbnb, at least a couple booking in a big city for the future. Something I want to talk about the pressure of social media on Airbnb. To me, it's very interesting, right? So the Airbnb buzz, for example, is really about people saying, I don't have enough demand, what's happening from the host side. But the whole campaign against cleaning fees as well on Airbnb has been about people complaining in video and TikTok, saying cleaning fees are so high. Actually, more than a year ago, Brian Chesky, Airbnb CEO, had to talk and say, we're gonna, make an inquiry. We want to know what's happening with our cleaning fees. And I look at their stats, and just to be fair with them, and to react to what you say, Francois, is as well. Yes, I mean, places and overall, Airbnb looks more expensive. It's also because for the last 2 years, people were not booking private homes. They were booking entire homes. And as we know, if you have a vacation rental home, it is more expensive. It takes more time to clean an entire home than a private home. So of course, suddenly people who used to book a cheap private room with almost zero, very low cleaning fees, suddenly we're booking, a place for a larger place, for more days, and obviously had a higher fee. So that's also created a whole backlash around Airbnb, which I find a bit unfair in the sense that in the end, it's not Airbnb who's deciding on cleaning fees. But I'll go into the next topic, because basically Airbnb now has announced, that they would be displaying a total full price on their website. What it really means here is that in the US, well, until now, at least, it's going to be in December. For now, if you make a search on Airbnb, you're going to find a place. The listings in the search results are going to be shown with a price per night. Then you go to the listing page, you'll still see price per night. You need to enter dates, and then you will see whether there's a cleaning fee on top. And so you will see whether there's a service fee, right? As you know, service fee is basically the money that Airbnb is taking from the guests. But what's also very interesting with Airbnb, I always like we have to remember that we know the industry, right? But guests don't. So they think sometimes the cleaning fee is decided by Airbnb, or they may think a service fee is decided by us, the hosts. So anyway, so sometimes it's like hundreds of dollars more at the end at the time of booking, right? When they are right into starting the book. So what Airbnb is doing now, well, starting December, the service fee, the cleaning fees, any other fee, because Airbnb has allowed for you to create a pet fee, a resort fee, all kind of things. All these fees will be fully loaded at the beginning, right? When you make a search on a destination, in their search results, you'll see the fully loaded price. But that's an option. A lot of people talked about this. Airbnb is going to display the full prices. This is not true, in the sense that the default option in December on Airbnb will still be the price per night. You're going to have to toggle something on to see the full price display. So it is very interesting that people didn't see that, but I'm like, yeah, that's not what Brian Chesky is showing in the demo. You have to toggle this on. Yes, I want to see the full price. And another thought about that. So again, it was, to me, social media got Airbnb to do this. But you know what? In Europe or Australia, New Zealand, we've had this for years. Like it's the European Union, for example, because of competition laws and consumer protection, has made it mandatory for Airbnb, Vrbo, and Booking.com, for example, to display this full price since 2019. So isn't it very interesting, Francois, that in North America, where you are, social media gets Airbnb to be made more transparent, whether actually it's more like laws and standards or the EU over here in Europe. What do you think?
Well, I think I agree. I mean, social media will always have an impact on decisions that companies make because at the end of the day, it's their audience, right? It's the guests and so on. It's one of the verticals that they sell into. But I think there's also a parallel to be made on how Airbnb is branding itself and marketing itself. In the sense that, so if you look at, I think it was back in 2017, when they pulled out of Google and being displayed on Google, part of the reason why is because they wanted to make sure that people weren't thinking, I'm going to Google a vacation rental, but rather I'm going to book an Airbnb to maintain that noun that they've coined in this industry that every one of us use. And I think there's a parallel to be made between that topic, this idea of marketing yourself as Airbnb and the pricing. And that's to reduce some of the frustration and that confusion that you mentioned around fees and so on. Is it Airbnb setting these fees? Why is Airbnb so expensive, et cetera? And actually potentially shift that over to the property manager or the host. See, it's no longer Airbnb overpricing with all the fees and so on. It's the host. So I think there's a negative impact.
It's a debate, and I will chime in here. I'm like, I've seen so many of this being like, oh, Airbnb saying, yeah, the issue was like the cleaning fee was like coming late and people didn't feel, they felt like cheated on. And I'm like, yeah, Airbnb, how about your service fee?
Correct.
You decide on that. And it was, and service fee is such a mess. What I mean is that, for example, in Europe, if you use software, channel manager to connect to Airbnb as a host, you must be on a host only fee model, which is Airbnb takes 15% from you and the guest pays 0, right? If you're a small host in the US, Airbnb takes 3% from you basically, and let's say 12% from the guest. So imagine I'm a guest on Airbnb, I'm using Airbnb, and what do you think, Francois, here, but that's why I had to jump in, right? I see this, and sometimes I did the experiment, right? I book a place in Bali, for example. Sometimes I see a service fee of like 15%, of 12%. Sometimes I see 0. I'm like, that's so inconsistent. And you know what? That's your fault, Airbnb. It's you offering 2 models, and then you say, it's all about the cleaning fee. I'm like, how about like
your service? Exactly. And I think, look, there's a drive. There's been a movement around direct bookings. There's been a sort of a hate movement as well from hosts on different OTAs during the pandemic for some of the things that some of the decisions they had made, just around when things popped with COVID. But I think it is to deflect, in a way, the business model around hosts that Airbnb has. Now, don't get me wrong. I think it has an impact. It's a two-way sword kind of thing, or two-way, I don't know, road. I don't know what the expression would be. But because the impact is as well for guests to feel like everything is one price. I mean, to be quite frank, when I'm looking for a place and then I have to find all these extra fees and it ends up being double the price, it is fairly frustrating. But then you also have to compare it. So if you split it between guests and hosts, right, and you look at it from the guest perspective, the average stay for Airbnb hosts is smaller than it is on VRB. It's smaller on Airbnb than it is on Vrbo, which means if you're booking 2 nights and the price is double because of the fees, well, the fees are static. They're consistent. Cleaning an apartment is going to be one cost to a certain extent, versus, if you book 1 week versus 2 days, it doesn't change much. That's on the guest impact. It's a positive impact for the guests because it unifies all that pricing, makes it easier to book. But on the host, I genuinely think it's going to deflect the pricing model that Airbnb has for hosts and blame it from a guest perspective on the host when actually it is part of Airbnb's business model. And last but not least, I would also add for the additional fees that customers are looking to collect. See, in Enzo Connect, for example, we've been promoting a lot things like security deposits, damage waivers, things that allow you to increase revenue per guest and security. But what we've noticed as a pattern is that people want to turn that feature off specific to Airbnb. Why? Because guests complain. If they book on VRBO, they have no problem paying a security deposit, paying a damage waiver fee, paying pet fees, whatever it is. But on Airbnb, they feel cheated. They feel like they went through the booking and now suddenly there's extra fees, and the fees are not on Airbnb. They're on platforms like Enzo Connect. They're on other platforms. And so I think it's also related to Airbnb bringing all of that payment element, focusing it on Airbnb, because that's how they make their money. They don't want payments to happen externally. In fact, they don't even want messaging to happen externally. So I think there's a bigger play here than just what they're marketing, which is we listen to you guests. Don't worry, it's all packaged into one, if that makes sense.
It does. And so now we're going to close on Airbnb, but I want to cover two questions. One from Steve, who basically, I didn't see your question, Steve, but same wavelength we were talking about. Steve was asking whether, about the basically the new host fee model I was talking about. So basically, right now on Airbnb, there are two models going on. There's the split fee model. Let's say a traditional model, which is like 3% from the hosts and about 12% from the guests, right? That we know. In a lot of countries, in Europe, for example, if you use a channel manager or if you're a property manager, basically, if you use any of Airbnb's hosting tools, professional hosting tools, you've been forced to go under the host-only fee model, right? Which is basically Airbnb is taking 50% from you, just like Booking.com is doing, basically. This was, I would say, about 2 years ago in Europe, and this has expanded. I said, so in more and more countries under the thing, I think and that's, again, smaller hosts tend to still have this split fee model. And for property managers, kind of depends on the countries. I think most people in the US now are under this 50% model. Again, that's not new. Sorry, there's some criteria to this. So I'm very interested from Steve or Jordan, for example, you were wondering about this, to know how many properties you have, whether you use a channel manager. So that's what I want to say, right? It's not a choice, right? You can't opt in. They're going to force you depending on where you are, right? And you can go online. It's not super precise, but I would venture. I mean, I talked with Price Labs. Funny enough, we talked about this week. It was not clear that it was actually live in the US, for example, for everyone, even for property managers. So it is very interesting. A second question was from Vinny, and Vinny was asking, are the OTA fees based on the nightly rate, including the other fees, cleaning, pet, resort, or not including the other fees? Okay, I was saying that, so what's interesting, for example, right? If I do remember correctly, Airbnb is also taking 50% of that. If you have the host fee model, right? I do think Airbnb is also taking commission out of that, if I'm not mistaken. Now, in terms of, is it included in a big chunk like this, like fees? Normally not. If you go to Airbnb, and if there's a cleaning fee, we'll say cleaning fee, service fee, pet fee, they do spell out the different fees. So I hope I got the answer right. Francois, anything to add to my answers or to?
Not specific to the answers, but I was looking at, because I just figured out where the Q&A button was on Zoom. So it took me a few minutes there to figure this out. But I also wanted to point out, Jacqueline Nord here explaining how 5% of her reservations are from Airbnb, and that most of them are actually direct. I think there's actually a huge movement that is underestimated, that isn't necessarily talked enough, or has been lately a bit more, around book directs, direct bookings that have taken over, people wanting to build their brand. They don't want to just be a yellow page business, an Airbnb business. And I think that plays into as well some of the strategies around the updates that Airbnb is doing to consolidate both their brand, to consolidate hosts, and to show them that they are aligned with the hosts. Because, I think, 6-7 years ago, all the new entrants, all the new players in the space were focused on being on these OTAs. New players in the space today are focused on building a brand. They're focused on building a unique business in a specific space with specific experiences. So that may play a huge role in how the current winter updates are heavily focused, I would say, on owners, including, retaliatory review protections, more category control, being able to say, hey, I'm part of these categories, and so on, is to benefit the host to a certain extent.
Agree. Let's now spend 5 minutes on layoffs, and which is it's sad, and 5 minutes on energy savings, energy crisis, and to leave time at the end. So, why are we talking about this right now? Well, let's say, let's see, barely a year ago, so is it 2 years ago? Airbnb went public, big success, fantastic. It's like they went from it's like resurrection. They almost died during the first lockdowns, and then a bit more than a year later, they are publicly traded. It's going really well. And as you remember, at the time, there was a lot of money, right? People trying to invest money here and there. So all through 2001, basically, there was a lot of money trying to get invested into things, and vacation rentals looked hot, right? So we had quite a few companies go public related to short-term rental industry. Not all the same, doing very different things actually, but they were like somehow like Airbnb, or kind of sound like to Airbnb for people who didn't know what it was, or they could say Airbnb, magic word. So for example, Vacasa, which is the biggest property management company in North America, Vacasa went public. We also had, for example, Home2Go, which is it's a booking channel / meta search going public in Europe. We saw a company like AvantStay. AvantStay was a bit different. They like raised funds to invest, let's say, in real estate or different kind of things. So it was so interesting. So a lot of companies with a high profile went public. Also Inspirato, which is more like, let's say, it's like a club for vacation rentals. They went public. And now what do we see? Like most of these shares are down 80%. Airbnb also is down, but only, if I may say, 40%. These companies are down 80%. And Vacasa, for example, they changed their leadership team. They have a new CEO, and they've laid off, I think it's second or third waves of layoffs. Or AvantStay, they laid off, I think, 20% of their staff. As Inspirato actually just said last week that the public statement they made for over the last 2 quarters were unreliable. So they had to tell the SEC that people should not rely on their past reports, which is a bit scary. So you wonder what to think. I must point out that Home2Go actually is doing quite okay. They should be profitable next year. So I don't know what to think here. What do you see here? My view, Francois, in a way, I see a lot of things have been bundled together. They have nothing. It's not the same activities, but they are, could say, Airbnb, the prospectus probably. And to me, there's a financial play that didn't turn out so well for some, like Vacasa, for example. They've never been profitable, right? They've been acquiring companies after companies. They're trying to now stop acquiring companies, go after individuals. But to me, it's like, yeah, the financial play didn't work out so much. What do you think? What do you think is happening here?
I think it's conflicting a hospitality business. And I'm going to quote Steve Milo on this one. I know Steve Milo is big on topics around Vacasa lately, but it's conflicting hospitality business versus a technology business. And I think that's probably the biggest reason behind some of the valuations, the going public at certain numbers, let's say. A tech company like ours, we have 97% margins. It's pure scale. Your biggest cost is engineers, but your overall infrastructure is your COGS, cost of goods sold in a way, are almost null. Whereas a hospitality business, we already know margins are not as great, let's say, as tech companies. And I think one of the conflicting points that I see with a few large hospitality managers is the technology that's out there is usually one size fits all. This is what it does, this is how it works, and that's it. And when you get to a certain scale, you need to start building technology in-house. And while I don't disagree with this, to tie different pieces together and make sure that it works for your business, you can't portray yourself as a tech company. You are a hospitality business first. And I think that conflicts on valuations. I mean, tech multiples are very different than hospitality business multiples. And then let's not forget, the past 2 years, multiples on tech companies in general were through the roof, especially in our industry. I mean, companies were raising money before even having ideas. You had stealth startups with funds investing in companies because the founder was really cool, and that's pretty much it. They didn't even have yet the idea or the company or even the name incorporated yet. So I think they tried to ride that wave, and that wave has now crashed. And they're now sort of suffering the consequences of it. I mean, I was looking at a bit, we're talking about 3% layoffs on Vacasa. So it's not a major layoff, but we are talking about 22% on AvantStay. I try to figure out if it was mainly tech people or not. I saw a fair good balance of positions, sales included, marketing included. But I think, the fact that technology is also a part of that sort of indicates that priorities probably have shifted towards focusing on not just growth at all cost, but a sustainable business, profitability at all cost. which is very different from the VC world that we've seen over the past 2-3 years.
Thanks for saying the word sustainable. It's a nice bridge for me to
Fair.
next topic. Is there any question about what we just talked about here for the big companies? Again, for a lot of us hosts or property managers, it's such a different world, a different world. And we're like, well, on the other hand, quite a few property managers have been acquired by Vacasa, right? And happily retired after that, as we usually say. But also there's been a lot of supply, you know, owners leaving these companies. And so it's very interesting what's happened.
And you know, sorry, I was just going to add to that, you know, AvantStay portrays different tech products. They've got Lighthouse, Stay, Butler, Voyage, Fresh. These are different verticals of the tools, and I'm sure some of them are white labels of other people's technologies sort of attached together and so on. But it's just remembering that you are tech enabled. I've seen quite a few property managers build their own owner portals, because I don't think there's a lot of systems out there that really have the correct owner portal, and using that as a mechanism to then raise money as VC money and portray the company as a tech company and so on, when actually the core business model is hospitality management. So I think there's an interesting move there, but money's going to start tightening up on businesses that don't have real profitability, a path to profitability, but also real technology, in the sense that, you know, the core business model is around these high growth margins that we
and not to geek out here, and we need to move to the last topic, but I remember interviewing the CEO of Hostaway, Marcus Rader, and we talked about how a lot of tech companies seem to be born out of property managers, right? Property manager company says, oh, you know what? I built this tech to solve my problem. I'm going to sell this. And then they do this, and then they realize they were actually solving their problem. And the way they're doing things doesn't make sense, or they've been successful into creating a hospitality business. It's not the same thing, exactly as you explained. To create a tech company, it's not the same people. The experimentation is very different, obviously. And he said it was very interesting how Marcus had very strong views, but I was like, that was light bulb for me. Yes, he's right. It's not because maybe in a way your hospitality business, sometimes, you know, it is, we complain that tools on the market don't work the way our business works, and we have to adapt. But it does mean, though, if you create your own tech to fit how your business works, maybe that 90% of the market doesn't work the way your business works, so your software would not meet the needs of others. I don't know. Yeah, it's just, again, not to geek out too much on the topic.
No, I know.
So,
I know we have to move on to the next subject.
Exactly. I want to talk about the green stuff, and I got properties in the Caribbean, for example, right? Because I used to live there. So, and I was afraid of talking about being sustainable, right? Feeling a hypocrite here and doing greenwashing. So I didn't start, because I'm like, yeah. But you know what? I'm gonna host a panel in Paris end of the week, or, you know, for scale rentals in France. And I've been doing a great panel, and I've been interviewing people for the panel. And what's been very interesting to me, there's a shift happening, at least in Europe. At VRMA, I don't think there was one session about energy crisis, sustainability. That's one session out of 100, I think. In Europe, there are, because, for example, what I'm noticing, that property managers care now about the topic because owners care. Owners care about this because this winter is going to be very expensive. What do we tell guests, right? Hey, guests, please be nice and, you know, don't spend too much on energy, right? But even last summer, the case happened in the sense that people arrive with their electric cars now, right? And they arrive from a long drive, charge up on your house, on your rental house, and before they leave, they charge up again. What do you do again? What do you do with the guests? Do you allow them certain amount of energy that's included in the price? So should we have a new energy fee coming up? So it's very concrete questions actually now leading property managers to say, oh, we need to address this kind of sustainability stuff just from the energy saving angles, because it's probably a way to retain or to attract new owners. So when I thought it was actually on the guest side, I'm like, yes, people say they want to, but will they? I see actually actual pressure, action happening on the host side. What's your view on this, Francois? Because I think Enzo Connect, you guys also care about this topic.
100%. I mean, one of the initiatives that we're launching very soon is dedicated guidebooks around sustainability, as well as an upsell for sustainability, where all proceeds will go to community-focused initiatives for sustainability. One of the things that I would add is, sustainability and what you pointed out, they say 67%, according to TripAdvisor, they did a survey recently that 67% of travelers had opted in for this more environmentally friendly hotels, food, transportation, and so on. But that's, for them, it's more of a, are you going to answer, say, no, I don't care about sustainability? Like, the survey in of itself is kind of skewed if you think about it. Who's going to answer that? But when you look at it from a community perspective, I think sustainability has three benefits. Obviously, as a goal we should all strive for on this planet, but also for the community. If you can show that your business is having a positive impact on the community, for lobbying purposes, for the city, regulations, registrations, things like that, if you can show that you're not just you're not increasing the housing crisis, you're actually affecting other verticals of the city, of the area in a positive way, that has been a huge push for both sustainability and the topic of short-term rentals. But also monetization opportunities that people have started realizing, that they can cater to an audience that is willing to purchase sustainable focused experiences, that cares about, whatever it is, whether it's taking a bike ride and using services to explore the area, sounds more fun, sounds more environmentally friendly, and use that as almost marketing collateral, marketing power to drive additional revenue streams. So I think it has a few plays. But overall, the impact is not just the guests wanting it. I don't think that that's really the key focus. I think it's the costs and the money behind it that's becoming more and more impactful.
Yeah. The only thing I would add here, Francois, on that side, because again, I've been like skeptical on the guest side. Yeah. The only thing I would say, again, I used to work at Booking.com, right? And what I always tell hosts, if you see Booking.com asking you in their extranet or Airbnb or Vrbo, asking you to fill in some information, please tell us about the size of your TV. Please tell us whether you have Netflix. Please verify your Wi-Fi speed. If they do that, it's because they have data that if you do give the information, the conversion could be higher. So basically, people would book more, so you could get more bookings, and the platform get more bookings and more money, right? And for example, Booking.com has introduced a green program distinguishing with 3 levels properties. Having worked at Booking.com, knowing their focus on profitability, if they are doing that, if they're showing guests these kind of filters and people can filter out, it does mean that it has an impact on conversion, but they know, or not just on money, but at least they know that it's changing the way people are booking. And what I'm hearing from from their experiments apparently is that people, as you said, they care. They would say, yes, I would. Between two, I would change it. I would, if for the same type of property, I would maybe pick the one more that's sustainable. Why not? Because people are more like the topic. But it's for the moment. Whether you can pay more is not super clear. I've seen experiments from Holidoo saying that people are willing to pay more, but I don't know. Let's say
I don't know
experiments for the moment.
Yeah, I'm not sure if people are willing to pay significantly more. I do think that there is an impact on pricing, especially when you share the overall CO2 impact that traveling has and so on. I think, if you look at tourism in general is responsible for 8% of carbon emissions, right? So vacation rentals plays probably a very big part of that in general. I mean, tourism is a very global way of seeing the industry, but I would just focus on the fact that it's not necessarily just the guests. It's also what you had mentioned around energy crisis, and costs going up for owners. Once money gets involved, that's when things start to get a bit more out there. We've been talking about sustainability for years now, and it's only becoming a hot topic now because we're noticing that our energy bills, when a guest leaves the heating on and you don't have a booking for a few days and it's blasting heat, it's costing you money. So I'd be intrigued by what you said initially, which is, are we going to start seeing fees on energy, which I've already seen actually in Mexico, people putting it in their agreements that
in Europe as well. Yes.
Yeah. After a certain price, you're paying after a certain cost of energy and so on. So it'll be an interesting shift. I don't know if the US is ready for that.
So
I don't-
let's see. So I'm going to close on this. I want to make sure I'm thanking Francois and Nathan. Maybe each of you, Francois, let's start with Nathan first, and then Francois, can you again let people know how to contact you best? So Nathan, what's the best way to contact you in your company?
Sure, guys. So just hit me up on LinkedIn or send me an email. I'll put the links in the chat below. And super happy to have interesting conversation with hosts and property managers.
Fantastic. Thanks for being with us today. How about you, Francois?
So it's simple. Just go on our website, ensoconnect.com, ENSOconnect.com, and you can learn more about what we do. Configuration is a big part of what we do. So not a one-size-fits-all guest experience platform. And you can book a demo directly from our platform if you want to learn more about how the tool works. Or reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to have conversations with property managers and people in the industry.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you, Francois, Nathan. Thank you, Yuvika, for setting this up. Thank you all for attending. There were about some point more than 40 people live. It was amazing. Again, if you're watching this tomorrow, as you know, we're saying this to our 5,000 people. As usual, it's great to be live because you feel like you get to ask questions. I did notice a lot of people had questions about Book Direct. I got that. I'm also hosting a panel this week about Book Direct. So next month, you can count that we have more things to say about Book Direct because again, I got clear views about, is it really more profitable to do Book Direct or not versus booking for big platforms? There's pros, there's cons, there's ways to maybe focus on people who booked with you to get them to rebook with you a second directly with you. Anyway, lots of topic I'm going to be covering this week, but during a panel, but we'll cover it next month for our catch up. Thank you all again and take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Vika.